Assalamu alaikum dear students. Hope you are fine. Welcome to the next part of Bloom taxonomy. In this part, we will be discussing about the modification or the revised version of Bloom taxonomy and also the type of questions that can be asked by a teacher in different levels of cognitive domain. So in this slide, we can see Lauren Anderson, who introduced the revised version. He was a former student of Bloom who, along with another author, Krathwohl, revised the Bloom taxonomy in the year 2001. They suggest a number of changes to the Bloom taxonomy. The first one was that the Bloom taxonomy that started from knowledge with on the base on the lower level and the other levels which were above the knowledge. So in the revised version, all the levels which were above the knowledge were regarded as skills and abilities, which can be mastered by a learner through practice. The next was that the nouns of the original Bloom taxonomy were replaced with verbs and gerunds. Let us move towards the next slide. So here is the slide that shows both the original version of 1956 and the revised version that was published in 2001. Starting from the lower order thinking skills in the original Bloom, so we had knowledge, which is now replaced by remembering in the revised version. Comprehension replaced by understanding. Application replaced by applying. And similarly, we have analyzing, evaluating, and creating. So the words basically mean the same thing in the revised version. The difference is that we have now ing, which makes them gerunds, which are more action oriented and forceful as compared to the original version. We have other option as well to replace the gerunds with the verbs. So instead of remembering, we can also use the verb to remember. For understanding, we can use the word understand, and similarly apply, analyze, evaluate, and create. So we can see that these revised version verbs are more powerful and more action oriented as compared to the nouns that were used in the original version. One other thing that we can see in this slide is the switching of the places of the last two levels. Evaluation, which was the last in the original version, is made second last. So for evaluation, evaluating is now in the second last level. And synthesis, which means to combine and to create something new, is put at the top. What is the reason for this switching? Because in the revised version, it was regarded that evaluating is a lower level of cognitive domain as compared to creating. Creating is a more high level of learning as compared to evaluating. Because in creating, the learner constructs new information. They create new information. They make new sense of the meaning of the information that they have obtained or they have gained. And this makes creating at the top of the cognitive domain in the revised version. So in this slide, we discuss the use of Bloom taxonomy or the purpose of Bloom taxonomy. First, it helps in instructional objectives. Remember, no teacher can teach without planning the objective of any lesson. Objectives provide directions to the teacher and make the teaching more effective. So Bloom taxonomy helps the teacher in setting the instructional goals and objectives that has to be achieved for a particular class. And based on this, the teacher select the content and design different activities based on the objectives that the teacher wants to achieve. So Bloom taxonomy helps the teacher in giving rightful place to the different levels of Bloom taxonomy, to the different levels in cognitive domain. For example, how much weightage should be given to remembering concept, or to the understanding concepts, or to the application concept, and so on. Second, it helps in writing learning objectives. This is linked with the first one. So while the first one is linked with the teaching and the instruction, the second is related to students. So it helps the student in knowing the learning objectives, what is expected from them, how much focus they should give on each level, and they know about the different levels. So they know that they have to go with remembering the content as well, applying the concept as well, understanding, analysis, synthesis. So all these helps the students in planning their learning objectives and keeping their learning objectives in mind. They can set different kind of learning styles and strategies. Third, it helps in assessment objectives. So while the teacher sets the instructional goals and the instructional objectives, so the teacher also evaluate all these objectives, whether they have been achieved or not, through some kind of assessment, through some kind of test or evaluation. And this guides the teacher what type of questions can be set in the assessment or the evaluation. For example, how much weightage should be given to each level of the cognitive domain. Uh, the problem with most of our assessments are that the assessments are mostly focused on remembering concepts or the understanding concepts and ignore the higher level of Bloom taxonomy cognitive domain. So by having right information and insight about Bloom taxonomy, the teacher can make good assessment and good evaluation test. Fourth, it helps in curriculum planning and designing and developing. Remember, curriculum is made up of content and different kind of activities. How a curriculum is planned and implemented depends upon the content and what objectives the curriculum is trying to achieve. Bloom taxonomy helped the curriculum planner and the curriculum developer to give rightful place to all the levels of Bloom taxonomy, and also to give rightful place to the different domains in the Bloom taxonomy. So the curriculum should focus on cognitive domain. It should also focus on affective domain as well as psychomotor skills. So all this can be possible by having insight and information about the Bloom taxonomy. Fifth, Bloom taxonomy help in the rightful progression from simple to complex. Remember, Bloom believes that behavior goes through a process. It goes step by step towards higher level. And the highs are not achieved unless the simple ones and the lowers are covered. And therefore the teaching is also directed towards that towards particular goal. And therefore the instruction progresses from known to unknown and from easy to difficult concepts. And lastly, Bloom taxonomy helped in making a balance between all the three domains, the cognitive domain, the affective and psychomotor skills. So while the educationists and the educational psychologists are aware that all these three domains have to be given rightful place, they are important for a balanced development of child. So therefore, there should be emphasis on cognitive skills and domains, also on the affective domain, and also on the psychomotor skills. After this, let us go towards some of the assessment questions that can be asked on Bloom taxonomy. So if we take the first level, the beginning level, which is knowledge or remembering, which refers to recalling of information, recalling of facts, some kind of dates or events or information about place or recalling different ideas. So the keywords that can be asked to assess the remembering concept of the student are list, define, tell, describe, and so on. Other words can also be used to ask questions on remembering concepts. For example, if a questions can be designed from who, then we can ask who was Christopher Columbus. Or if we are using when, so we can ask when was America discovered. So you can see that these type of questions are aimed at evaluating the remembering level of Bloom taxonomy, which is the lower level. Other examples of questions that can be asked are, what are the names of bones in your arm? So the student use their mind to recall the names of the bones. So relates to the remembering concept. Or second question is, when did World War II begin? So here the students will be searching for a particular year to answer this question. And so on, we have other questions as well, which are asking or which are targeting the remembering concept or the memory concept of the student. So this slide is about the second level of Bloom taxonomy, cognitive domain, which is understanding or comprehension. The keywords that can be asked to ask such type of questions are summarize, describe, interpret, and so on, and we also have explain. So these type of questions ask the student to recall the information and use that information to answer a particular question. Let's see some example of the questions that can be asked from this level. Name 3 ways in which Abraham Lincoln is considered a successful president. What are the recurrent themes in the movie Jack and Mill? How does the central nervous system coordinate movement? Retell the story of the 3 little pigs in your own words, and so on. So all these questions encourage the student to use the information in the mind, in the memory, and take all that information and explain the information in their own words. So such type of questions require an elaboration or explanation of the information which is gained by a student. This slide is about application or applying concept. This refers to using information to use the already information about the methods, the concept or theories, and use them in new situation. To use the previous information or knowledge to solve problems using the required skills or knowledge. The key words that can be asked in these questions are apply, demonstrate, calculate, and so on. You can also see the other words of the question as well. Let's do some examples of the questions that can be asked from applying. Construct a planetary model. Question 2. Make a PowerPoint presentation on a specific topic. How does a teacher concept of intelligence affect her teaching style? So as we can see at the questions content, they're asking the student to use the information or the knowledge that they have and use that information to apply them in different situations, in novel situations where they can solve a particular kind of problem. For example, constructing a planetary model would require the information about the planets, their orbits, their distance from the sun, and then they can make and apply that information to construct a model. This slide is about analysis or analyzing concept, which relates to looking over the information as a whole, seeing the different kind of patterns in the information, identifying the different parts or organizing the different parts, and understanding the hidden meaning in the information. The type of questions are analyze, separate, order, explain, and so on. Please know that these keywords are not specific to a particular level. We cannot say specifically or for sure that these keywords will only aim at analysis or analyzing level of cognitive domain. These words may also test other levels of cognitive domain as well. Remember, this depends upon the content of the question in which the question is asked. For example, explain can also be used in comprehension or understanding, and so on. Other can also be used with different levels of cognitive domain. Let us do some examples from the analysis or analyzing. Why adolescence is called period of storm and stress? Remember, in this question, the student would recall the information about the features or the characteristics of adolescence. Use that information, split them into parts to answer this question. Question number 2. Keeping in mind the fast transmission of COVID-19, analyze its effects on student social relation. Now this question, the student would recall the COVID-19 and how the people are dealing with COVID-19 that aims at safety precautions like social distancing and social isolation. So in this kind of context, while to prevent the fast transmissions of COVID-19 would definitely affect their social relation. And for this, the student has to take all the information, has to think over all the information about COVID-19, analyzing them into parts, and then using them to see its effect on social relation. And similarly, other questions are also given from analysis. The next is synthesis or creating. Remember, synthesis or creating is at the top in the cognitive domain in the revised version. Synthesis or creating refers to using the previous information, the old ideas, or already the diffused or absorbed information to create new ones, to create new meanings from the information or from the knowledge that has been acquired, to generalize facts and to relate knowledge from several areas, or to predict and draw conclusion. So this aim at arriving at new principles, arriving at new theories, or suggest new suggestions or guidelines by using the previous information. The keywords that can be asked are combine, integrate, modify, rearrange, and so on. The type of questions that can be asked are: if you are asked to be a consultant, what suggestions will you recommend for student mental health during pandemic? Remember, this question aim at the student previous information about psychology, which they will be using here. And because they are asked to be a consultant, therefore now they are creating new information. They are suggesting something for the mental health based on their previous information about the psychology and the different kind of problems. Second question, design a banner or a chart that enlists the psychological problem in married couple and suggest their solution. Again, this question asks the student to use their background information about the different types of psychological problems in married couple. Design them, make them all test all those problems, mention all those problems, and then suggest the solutions for these problems. Again, this aim at creating new information from already absorbed information by the learner, and therefore it relates to a more higher level of learning in the Bloom taxonomy. This slide is about evaluation or evaluating, in which we compare and discriminate between ideas. We assess the value of the information, assess the worth of the theories or the information that has been acquired by a learner, and from that the learner make a choice based on reason or argument. So in evaluation, the learner make a good decision, a wise decision about the worth of a particular situation or the worth of a particular knowledge that has been asked. The type of questions that can be asked are assess, decide, rank, grade, test, and so on. The examples of the questions that can be asked are: what type of movies you think should be good for children? Suggest 5 rules that you think is important for a good classroom management. How would you handle an educational institution during the lockdown and also satisfying the parents and students? Is it good to strain relation with your neighbor if he is very non-cooperative, and so on? So can we see that these type of questions is aiming at the previous information that the student has, and then the student make a meaning from that particular stored information to make a decision, to give value to the information, to make worth of the decision that the student will take in these type of questions. For example, in the first question, the student will decide about what type of movies are good for children, and therefore they would look at the value of the information, what kind of uh, content is not good for a student, and therefore they make a decision about a particular content. They evaluate the worth of that particular content and suggest the solution. And similarly, other questions are also there. And with this, we come to the end of this unit. I hope you understand the unit of Bloom taxonomy and its application. I wish you good luck. Thank you.